The alarm clock blinked 6:47 a.m., 2 minutes late. Nathan's gut twisted. Olivia always knocked at 6:45. Something was wrong. He sat up in bed, listening for her footsteps in the hallway. But the house was silent. Too silent. He threw off the covers and crossed the room, opening his door to check the hall. Olivia's door was slightly ajar. That wasn't normal. Nathan hesitated before stepping inside. Her bed was still made, the sheets tucked in as if they hadn't been slept in. That was the first sign that something was off. Olivia was meticulous about her morning routine. Wake up, make her bed, grab her backpack, knock on his door, and head downstairs. But today, her backpack was missing. Yet her shoes were still neatly placed by the door. A full glass of water sat untouched on her nightstand. A chill ran through him as he scanned the room. Olivia never left without her journal. She guarded it as if it held her deepest secrets. But now, it was nowhere to be seen. His stomach tightened. Maybe she had already left for school. He rushed downstairs expecting to see her at the breakfast table, but their parents were there, acting as if nothing was out of the ordinary. His mother sipped her coffee while his father checked his emails, neither of them showing any sign of concern. "Where's Olivia?" Nathan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. His mother barely looked up. "She left already, didn't she?" Nathan's heart pounded. I don't think so." He hesitated, debating whether to tell them what he had found upstairs, but something held him back. Instead, he grabbed his phone and checked the time again. If Olivia had gone to school, she should be there by now. Minutes later, a notification buzzed on his phone. A message from one of Olivia's teachers. "Is Olivia sick today? She didn't show up for class." Nathan's breath caught. She wasn't at school. His hands grew clammy as he typed out a quick response, saying he'd check with his parents. But deep down, he already knew something wasn't right. The uneasy feeling worsened when he stepped outside. A neighbor, Mrs. Carter, stood near the mailbox and gave him a curious look. "Looking for Olivia?" she asked. Nathan frowned. "Yeah. Did you see her this morning?" Mrs. Carter nodded slowly, as if piecing together her own memory. "I did, actually. But she wasn't heading toward school." His stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" "She was walking in the opposite direction," the old woman said, her forehead creasing. "Looked like she was in a hurry, clutching something tight against her chest. I thought it was odd, but I figured she was running an errand or something." Nathan's mind raced. Olivia wouldn't just skip school. She was the kind of kid who turned in assignments early and reminded others about due dates. She didn't break the rules, at least not without a good reason. Determined to figure out what was going on, he went back inside and returned to Olivia's room, searching for anything he might have missed. That's when he saw it. A folded note tucked inside her desk drawer. With shaky fingers, he pulled it out and unfolded the paper. It was Olivia's handwriting. "If anything happens, don't trust them." His breath caught in his throat. What did that mean? Who was them? His head spun with possibilities, none of them good. He rushed to his room and opened his laptop, pulling up the security footage from the front door camera. He scrolled back to early that morning, his pulse quickening with every second that passed. Then he saw her, Olivia, slipping out of the house before dawn. No hesitation, no looking back. She wasn't just leaving. She was running away. And the direction she took? Straight into the woods. Nathan couldn't shake the image of Olivia disappearing into the woods. He replayed the footage again and again, trying to catch any detail that might explain why she had left. Was she meeting someone? Running from something? He knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just some rebellious act. Olivia wasn't like that. She was careful, thoughtful. Whatever had driven her to leave so suddenly had to be serious. The next morning, when Olivia finally came home, she acted as if nothing had happened. She slipped into the house just before dawn, her clothes slightly wrinkled, her hair messier than usual. When Nathan confronted her, she barely looked at him. "Where were you?" he demanded, his voice a low whisper so their parents wouldn't hear. Olivia hesitated for only a second before giving a tired smile. "I just needed some air," she said, brushing past him. That was the first time he noticed something was different. Olivia had always been open with him, telling him everything from which teachers annoyed her to the latest book she was obsessed with. But now she was shutting him out. Over the next few days, the changes became impossible to ignore. Olivia barely ate at dinner, pushing her food around her plate without taking more than a few bites. She used to be the first to laugh at their father's terrible jokes, but now she just sat in silence. She barely spoke unless spoken to, and when she did, her voice lacked its usual energy. Nathan started paying closer attention. He saw how her phone screen would light up at odd hours, displaying unknown numbers before she quickly turned it face down. Once, he caught her staring at a message, her hands gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Before he could ask her about it, she tucked the phone away and forced a smile, pretending everything was fine. One night, he heard something that made his stomach twist. It was late, the house dark and quiet. As he walked past the bathroom, he heard muffled crying. Olivia was inside, her breaths ragged, her sobs quiet like she was trying not to be heard. Nathan hesitated, his hand hovering near the door, but something inside him told him not to push. Instead, he stepped away, pretending he hadn't heard anything. He tried bringing up his concerns to their parents, but they brushed him off. "She's just growing up, Nathan. Teenage girls go through phases," their mother said dismissively. "Give her some space." But Nathan knew better. This wasn't just a mood swing. Something was happening, something Olivia wasn't telling anyone. And then he found the note. It was crumpled beneath her bed, half hidden under the mattress. At first, he thought it was just another page from her journal. But when he unfolded it, his breath caught. The handwriting wasn't Olivia's. The message was short but chilling. "You don't belong here." His grip tightened around the paper as his mind raced. Someone had written this. Someone had left it for her to find. But who? And what did it mean? He suddenly realized that whatever had scared Olivia enough to run wasn't over. If anything, it was only getting worse. Nathan couldn't ignore the warning any longer. The note, "You don't belong here," was proof that Olivia was in trouble. But from who? And why wasn't she telling anyone? Over the next few days, things spiraled even further. Olivia barely spoke, her once bright eyes dull with exhaustion. She jumped every time her phone vibrated, her fingers twitching before she shut it off. Dark circles formed under her eyes, and Nathan noticed her wearing long sleeves, even though it wasn't cold. When he tried to ask what was wrong, she brushed him off with the same weak excuse. "I'm fine, just tired." Nathan knew she was lying. Then, one afternoon, he found something that confirmed his worst fears. Olivia had left her bedroom door slightly open, and Nathan hesitated before stepping inside. He didn't want to invade her privacy, but his gut told him that whatever was going on, she needed help, even if she wouldn't admit it. His eyes scanned the room, looking for anything that might give him answers. That's when he saw it. Her notebook. It was wedged between her mattress and the wall, like she had tried to hide it in a hurry. Nathan's hands trembled as he pulled it free. He hesitated for only a second before flipping it open. The first few pages were filled with ordinary notes, little sketches, and random thoughts. But then, the handwriting changed. It became messy, frantic. The words scratched into the paper were filled with panic, fear, and sadness. They won't stop. I can't tell anyone. Maybe if I disappear, it'll all go away. Nathan's heart pounded as he turned the page. A list of reasons why Olivia felt like disappearing. Each sentence hit him like a punch to the gut. I ruin everything. They said I don't belong here. Every time I think it's over, it gets worse. Tears blurred his vision as he flipped through more pages. Screenshots were taped inside, printouts of cruel text messages, threats, mocking words. Someone had been tormenting Olivia, breaking her down piece by piece, and she had kept it all to herself. Nathan felt sick. How had he missed this? How had no one noticed? His mind raced. Should he tell their parents? Go straight to Olivia and beg her to open up? Or should he try to figure out who was behind all of this? Before he could decide, the front door slammed downstairs. Olivia was home. Nathan barely had time to shove the notebook back under the mattress before she appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. "Nate," she whispered, her voice fragile. "I need to tell you something." His stomach twisted. She knew he had seen the notebook. But before she could say another word, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and all the color drained from her face. Nathan didn't think. He lunged for the phone and snatched it from her hand before she could react. The message was short. "We warned you. Now it's too late." A cold chill ran down his spine. "Olivia," he said, voice shaking. "Who is we?" She swallowed hard, tears brimming in her eyes. "They're coming." Nathan's hands trembled as he stared at the message on Olivia's phone. "We warned you. Now it's too late." His heart pounded in his chest as he looked up at her, waiting for an explanation. But all he saw was sheer terror in her eyes. She took a step back, her breath coming in quick, shallow. Gasps. "Olivia," he said carefully. "Who is we?" She swallowed hard, her lips quivering as she tried to find the words. I don't know," she whispered, but Nathan could tell she was lying. Before he could press further, the front door burst open. Their parents were home. Olivia flinched at the sound, looking over her shoulder as if she expected someone else to walk in. Nathan had never seen her like this before. So small, so helpless. Without thinking, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the living room. "We need to tell them. Now," Olivia resisted, shaking her head. "No, you don't understand. If they find out, it'll get worse." Nathan turned to her, his voice low and urgent. "Worse than what, Olivia? Look at you. You're terrified. You're barely eating. You're—" He stopped himself, chest heaving, then whispered, "You ran away." Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes, and she clutched her arms around herself. She looked so fragile, like she might shatter if he pushed too hard. But he had no choice. He had seen the notebook. He knew she was in too deep. Nathan let go of her wrist and turned toward their parents. His voice wavered, but he forced the words out. "Mom, Dad, something is really wrong." Their mother glanced up from her purse, a distracted expression on her face. "What are you talking about?" "It's Olivia," Nathan said. She's in danger." His father frowned, setting down his phone. "Danger? From who?" Nathan hesitated, his throat tightening. He had proof, but saying it out loud made it feel so much worse. He turned back to Olivia, silently begging her to speak up. but she stood frozen, her eyes locked on the floor. The doorbell rang, making them all jump. Olivia's head snapped up, her face going ghostly pale. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Before anyone could react, there was a sharp knock, then another. It wasn't casual, it wasn't friendly, it was deliberate. Nathan's father frowned and walked toward the door. "Who could that be?" Olivia suddenly gasped, her whole body trembling. "Don't open it!" Their father paused, glancing at her. "Olivia, what's going on?" She didn't answer. Her whole body was shaking violently now, and Nathan realized she was on the verge of breaking down. The knocking grew louder. Nathan's mother looked between her two children, worry growing on her face. "Nathan," she said, "what's happening?" He had seconds to decide, seconds to act. Without thinking, he pulled out his phone and dialed 911. The moment the dispatcher answered, Olivia let out a strangled sob. "You had no right!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "You had no right to do this." But Nathan ignored her. He turned away, gripping the phone tightly. "My sister is in danger. I don't know who's at the door, but something is really wrong. Please, send someone. Now." The dispatcher's voice remained calm, but Nathan barely heard her. All he could focus on was Olivia. Her tear-streaked face, her furious eyes, the way her whole body shook with rage and fear. Their father turned toward the door again, hesitating for only a second before unlocking it. The moment the bolt clicked, Olivia let out a gut-wrenching scream. "No!" she sobbed. "Please, don't!" But it was too late. The door swung open, and standing on the porch, bathed in the glow of the porch light, was a figure Nathan had never seen before. A tall man in a dark coat. Expression unreadable. Eyes locked directly on Olivia. Nathan stepped in front of her, shielding her without thinking. His breath was shallow, his fists clenched at his sides. The man smiled, and then the red and blue lights of the police car flooded the driveway. The flashing red and blue lights cast long shadows across the living room walls. Olivia clung to Nathan's arm, her breathing ragged, her entire body trembling as the officers stepped inside. The man at the door, the one whose presence had sent Olivia into a full panic, was pulled aside by the police before he could say a word. Nathan didn't know who he was, but Olivia did. The way she shrank behind him, her fingers digging into his sleeve, told him everything. This man was the reason she had been afraid, the reason she had run. The next few hours blurred together. Olivia was taken into another room to speak privately with an officer, their parents hovering nearby in shock. Nathan sat on the couch, his hands still shaking as he replayed the moment in his mind. The way Olivia had screamed, the sheer terror in her eyes. When Olivia finally emerged, her face was streaked with tears, but there was something else in her expression. Relief. The weight she had been carrying for so long had finally begun to lift. The days that followed were filled with difficult conversations. The truth unraveled piece by piece, and with each revelation, their parents grew more horrified. Olivia had been targeted for months, harassed online and in person. The texts, the notes, the whispers in the hallways at school. She had tried to handle it alone, afraid that speaking out would make things worse. The man at the door hadn't been a stranger. He was connected to someone from school, someone who had taken things too far. Nathan's stomach twisted when he realized how much she had suffered in silence. He had seen the changes in her, but he hadn't done enough. Not soon enough. The guilt gnawed at him, but Olivia never blamed him. Instead, she thanked him. "You saved me." she whispered one night when they sat on the back porch, staring at the darkened treetops. I was too scared to say anything. Too scared no one would believe me. But you... Her voice broke. You wouldn't let me disappear. Tears stung Nathan's eyes, but he forced himself to smile. That's what big brothers are for. Things didn't go back to normal overnight. Olivia still flinched at sudden noises. Some nights she couldn't sleep, and Nathan would find her curled up on the couch, staring at the darkened TV screen. Their parents became more present, checking in more, making sure Olivia felt safe. It was uncomfortable at times, but necessary. The bullies faced consequences. Some were expelled, others were dealt with legally. But in the end, this wasn't a story about revenge. It was about survival, about Olivia finding her way back to herself, one step at a time. Weeks later, Nathan sat across from her at the breakfast table and noticed something small yet significant. Olivia laughed, a real, genuine laugh. It was the first time in months. Nathan felt his chest loosen, the weight of the past weeks slowly lifting. Maybe things would never be the same. Maybe Olivia would always carry the scars of what had happened. But she was here. She was healing. And for the first time, Nathan believed the future would be brighter. As she turned to him, still smiling, she reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I love you, Nate. He squeezed back, a lump forming in his throat. I love you too, Liv.